by stopping the spread of COVID, but we understood that was going to come at an economic cost. We saw a lot of help come from the federal government in terms of a stimulus check and the added bump on unemployment insurance. As we see that going away this week and uncertainty whether it comes back, we need to be prepared, and it's places like Second Harvest, Northern Lakes, that makes a difference for us. We're also here to highlight our partners. We don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to delivering services to people. And the state of Minnesota has shown a neighborliness in times of need, and also a creativity in making sure people kind of have one-stop shopping, whether it be housing needs, workforce development, heating and utilities assistance, and then food security. And so we're using this network to highlight one of the ways that all of us can help bend the curve, keep our businesses open, get our little ones back in school, is by wearing a mask. And we want to make sure that folks have access to at least 1 or 2 cloth masks that they can use, and then of course wash and reuse safely. And we're using our food distribution network of our food banks and our food shelves to get out 400,000 of those to folks who need them. That's on the back of 4 million that we delivered last week via the Chamber of Commerce across the state. And the intention was, now it's been 2 weeks since we've been into this, that we anticipated somewhere around the 15th of August we should start to see an impact from that. There were some good studies done in Kansas that counties that went to mask mandates saw a significant reduction in the spread of COVID. It really hits home in St. Louis County, where it is now St. Louis County's turn to see a little bit of growth. But we've learned a lot since this has happened. We've seen counties grow like Nobles County because of outbreaks at specific businesses, in that case meatpacking, and we're able to respond very quickly to kind of tamp that down, to stop the spread, understand where it's coming from, keep people healthy. So our purpose up here today is to thank the folks, thank the full-time staff that works here, thank the volunteers, and to thank Minnesotans for your generosity to make sure no family goes hungry, and then also to thank the legislature and the partners who made that happen. I want to be, between the federal government and state legislators, we've been able to move 2 tranches of about $50 million into our food security system that gets directly, and this is one of the most efficient things we do, it moves directly into highly efficient organizations like Second Harvest, where nearly every single penny of a dollar goes into serving families, and that is a really efficient way to do that. So thank you for that, and I think if you want to hear some specifics about this particular operation, this is one that we count on, as I said, for northern Minnesota. Shay, if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, certainly we are just grateful to the governor for being here today, and of course our legislators too. Very much appreciative of the support that the state of Minnesota has provided to us. So as Governor Walz mentioned, we recently received a shipment of part of those masks that we actually had volunteers this week pack up, and we're mobilizing to our northeastern Minnesota food shelves, so about 30 plus food shelves. That's really important because we know that many of the people who receive our food assistance have compromised health. So whether it's chronic health issues like diabetes or heart disease, it's really important that we're keeping them safe. So by having our food shelves, volunteers, staff wearing masks, it's certainly going to protect our citizens as well. So we're grateful not only for that, but certainly the support that's been provided. I was sharing earlier that we've seen a 52% increase in USDA commodities into this building. That is due in part to the work that the state of Minnesota, and of course these fine people behind me, have supported to make sure that our northeastern Minnesota residents have access to food. So very important times, critical times for us. So it's really important that we have that support, that they're able to provide fresh fruits and vegetables and protein and all those wonderful products that have been mobilized thanks to the state. So excited about that partnership, and certainly know that we couldn't do it without them. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Schultz? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Schultz, State Legislator for East Duluth, District 7A, and I'm happy to be here today. And I'm very grateful and appreciative that the governor is here in Duluth to recognize the importance of wearing face masks. If we want to get our economy opening again, it's really important that we reduce the number of positive cases of COVID. And right now we're seeing that increase in St. Louis County, mostly in Duluth. And we need to make sure people are staying a physical distancing apart and wearing their face masks. I'm very appreciative to work alongside Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. I think our state has very strong leadership, and we're doing so much better than so many other states. So I'm really grateful for their leadership, and I'm grateful Governor Walz continues to have emergency powers to act quickly. We cannot, as a legislator, especially a divided legislature, act quickly enough to respond to this crisis. So I'm very grateful. So thank you, Governor Walz.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Simonson? Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Eric Simonson, State Senator representing Duluth. I also want to echo the comments about thank you for the Governor Walz and his administration and all the work that they've done as we've progressed through this pandemic and trying to figure out how to respond to it in such a way that we're continuing to take care of those people that are in the greatest of need and at the same time planning for the future. What does it look like on the other side of this? How are we going to recover from that? And this organization is one perfect example that we here in Duluth know very well. Of an organization that does such great work for our community. Food insecurity was a big thing before the pandemic hit us, and it's only compounded that many times over again since we've gone through this. So we know we've got work to do. I'm grateful to be a part of that solution. This is just one small part of it. It takes a village really to solve this entire problem. But we'll be thinking about this, and we are thinking about this next week when we, presumably we'll be back in session soon. And I think probably next month and the month after that and the many months after that as we recover from this. It's about making sure that we take care of Minnesotans, and really appreciative of all the good work that's done here, appreciative of the governor and your staff and the work that you've done, and look forward to continue working with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I'd like to echo Representative Schultz's comments. Now is a really critical time. We're seeing it across the country, these spikes, and we're learning much about COVID. We're 2 weeks into the mask mandate statewide. We know that courageous mayors and city councils like in Duluth started moving early. I would tell Minnesotans the sense of fatigue around COVID, I have it. I'm watching just like you are. Last night I was on, as a parent, on a web broadcast from my superintendent in St. Paul. My son's in the public schools in St. Paul, an 8th grader, of what's happening. I want to know. The state's job is to use the best data possible, public health data, and try and make sure that we're doing the things necessary, that by wearing a mask, that keeps our businesses open. By wearing a mask and social distancing, we can get our kids back in school, keep them and their teachers and their support staff safe. We knew from some of the modeling that we were going to start peaking again, as we are a little bit, in August, but we've used this time very wisely. We have the supplies necessary to make sure that the protective equipment is given to our first responders, those frontline workers in healthcare and elsewhere. We've done what we needed to do to make sure that the beds are there. We've done the things we needed to make sure that, God forbid, you need an ICU capacity or a ventilator, that those are available, and we're looking across the state to understand what it would take to do that. So we've got a lot of those things done, and we've gotten better at caring for people. Their time in the hospital stay is shorter, and the number of people entering ICU is lower. We have reduced the deaths, and one death is too many, but we've kept it in the single digits right now. And our positivity rate is still hovering around 5%. And I don't know whether today's a blurb or not, but I'm like with many of you. We need to follow the science, we need to follow the facts, but we need to stay optimistic that we can beat this thing. And today was the first day in months that we saw a positivity rate of about 3.5%. Now, whether that is a indicator of a trend, we'll have to wait and see. But the one thing I can tell people, when so many things feel out of control in COVID, wearing the mask, social distancing, and washing your hand is totally in your control, and the science behind it shows a dramatic decrease. We could be at a point right now, if we push this thing hard, we could push it back down. We don't want to end up, we're in a situation where we go above 20% positivity rates like we saw in the southern states, or even 30% in Arizona. And just so if you do this and you do it right, New York City's reporting just slightly over 1% today. And if you get to the point where this thing is not spreading between people, more one person's giving it to 2 or 3 people, you can get a handle on this, push this down, and we can get back to the things we really like doing, like being with family, seeing them, having birthday parties. And so I want to thank Minnesotans for their patience. I want us just to dig a little bit deeper here. I'm not quite sure if we're to halftime or not, but we're going to win this thing. And we've done a lot of work that I don't want to let us slip away, and we've done a lot of work to protect our neighbors and to take care of them. So getting masks to people who are getting food because they're food insecure is not only protecting their families, it's protecting yours. So thank you for that. And with that, I would take any questions, or if any of our folks here you want to ask.
Governor Walz, most can agree that the mask mandate is the right decision, but what do you say to those that are bringing upon that lawsuit that's saying that are fighting against your effort to keep everyone safe?
Yeah, the lawsuit and the one is specifically on voting. First thing I would say is vote absentee. You can do that. Secondly, vote curbside, which we're trying to set up on that. Third, I would say, if you disagree with this, go vote against me or someone else. Don't use public health as the hill that we're all almost literally going to die on. It doesn't make any sense. And so I would just ask folks, I hear you on this. I find no pleasure in having to ask people to do this, but I also understand that is the responsibility that falls with us. And I want to thank Representative Schultz, because this becomes a very touchy political issue. I am a legislator, a 6-term member of Congress, and the separation of powers is critically important. But the Constitution was really clear about how they made sure that emergency powers in an emergency were given so we could move quickly. And so one of the things we've been able to do is, for example, in a tight supply chain, we've had to make purchases of things like N95 masks or ventilators on a moment's notice. If we went through the whole legislative process, we would miss those opportunities. It would take months. Each one of those is reviewed by the legislature, and the expenditure is approved before it's paid off. So it's not as if I have the authority to spend all this money. I have the authority to authorize us to get what we need, and then they're verified. So I guess my thought is first of all, I recognize people. I applaud the people who are championing and asking to make sure we keep a hard separation of powers. I would ask them to stay consistent. If they're asking me, they need to ask the president the same way. They need to ask the legislature to understand if the governor can't do it, are you going to do it? And how are you going to get that done? So I don't want to discourage people. I think the courts are the right place for these things to be decided. But I just think fighting over the science of wearing the mask to produce the spread is not the best use of energy for any of us. But I will respect what the courts say. If this goes to courts and the courts say that's wrong, my take is at this point in time, I think Minnesotans are going to do it anyway now because they see where we're going, and that's the whole thing. I can't enforce it in every corner of the state, but what I can tell people is you're wearing the mask to protect your neighbor. You're wearing the mask to make sure that we can get our businesses open, and you're wearing the mask to make sure if you go to vote, you're not choosing between your health and voting. You can do both.
I want to ask a question about schools.
Sure.
We've already seen Duluth kind of shift within the week. We've seen Rochester shut down secondary schools. Do you have any regrets about giving this decision to the districts? And do you foresee a day where you might have to kind of make a broad?
No, it's a great question, and it's one that, to be quite honest, I probably had 50 meetings on this, hundreds of hours as we talked about it. I'm still convinced the way we're approaching this, using the best public health data and the guideposts, and then working hand in hand, both supporting those the public health data we're getting out there and then supporting the resources necessary to have them do that, takes into account the spread of a virus in the community plus what the facilities are. If you have an old school with narrow hallways, that might be very hard. An example of this is Hendricks, for example. Hendricks out in Lincoln County, they have one of the highest incidents in the state. They were above 70 per 10,000, which puts them way above the 50 where they are fully distance learning. But one of the things is these are isolated to events that happen there. The elementary school in Hendricks has 6 children per classroom. We think there's a potential for them to be able to do that. So I think of looking to try and figure that out, yes. Is there going to be a shifting back and forth? Absolutely. It might have been easier. I mean, the irony of this is that I often get accused of in doing some of these things as one size doesn't fit all. I don't disagree with that, but sometimes one size fits all is simpler to both enact and to carry out. On this, I think your question, we have to wait and see. And I think the virus, everybody wants certainty. I want certainty. The virus won't give us that certainty unless we take control of it by some of the things we're doing. I do remind people the data about closing school and the data that you're seeing out there has a lag of at least 14 days. So if you're looking at the mask mandate went into effect 2 weeks ago tonight. So today and tomorrow would be the first day you'd start to see the effects from that Saturday. Tomorrow would be Saturday and Sunday of 2 weeks ago, and you will start to pile up. So over the next 2 weeks, we'll really get to see what the impact of that had, and I think the same thing with schools. But I just want to say to parents, to administrators, to Minnesotans, getting schools open is critically important. it is also incredibly complex. I pored over every state's plans. I've talked to dozens of governors for countless hours. We've looked at plans from Israel, from South Korea, from Hong Kong on what they were doing. We're going to have to craft our own that meets our circumstance, but I do just tell people you're going to have to be prepared to be flexible. You may start out in class and move to distant learning. You may start out in distant learning, and it's our goal. To be successful in this, it's my hope that every single child is walking across their graduation stage, whether it's from kindergarten or from high school, that we're having proms, and it's going to be weird, but I want to see football played in April, and hope we're able to do that, and I'll be there. But yeah, I won't tell you that's absolutely right and it won't move. But I think it's the right decision at this point in time, and I think the responses from the community have been spectacular.
Yeah, and just to play off that, what about, I've heard some concerns that we're asking teachers to do double the work in this hybrid model where a couple days a week they're in the classroom.
Oh yeah, impossible. Yeah, I was with at the Teacher of the Year ceremony last night on the Capitol steps, and like I said, this will be a first day of school like we've never seen. And I said what we asked of teachers and of parents and students was unprecedented in March, and we're doing it again. Yeah, there's no doubt we're asking them to go above and beyond. That's why I think the state has a responsibility to provide the best data and the best planning we can for them, plus the resources we have. We were very strategic and held back about $250 million of the CARES Act money specifically for school opening to get that out there. But what I would tell teachers is yes, like always, you're being asked to do far more than what the resources you have. The one thing, and I had a young teacher yesterday at an event, I came up and was very concerned. I have to be able to tell parents, look them in the eyes, tell teachers and staff to look them in the eyes. We're trying to strike the right balance here, but I cannot compromise health just to try and get back in that classroom. We have to do the best we can. So they're right. They're being asked to do more. I have to give them all the support, and our districts have to give them all the support, but this is going to be really hard. And I fear, but I think they still keep stepping up and doing it, that we're burning people out, we're losing them, because this is asking an awful lot. I mean, I did it for 20 years. It's a hard enough job when your classroom is not have a global pandemic and everything is fine. That is still difficult to do, and you're still being asked to do a lot. So we're going to have to figure this out together.
A quick question for Shay.
Sure.
You talked a little bit about the programs and the mass donations and things that have helped you. What more do you want to see from the state going forward?
Yeah. Certainly, again, that the outpouring of support for Neighbor has been phenomenal already. We're worried about what's to come. I mean, certainly, we're seeing inklings that things might change again for this community and for our region. So it's really important, I think, that we continue to have that stable workforce of volunteers, that we have the financial support to guide that work. So really, I think it's just important for the region to continue to support what we're trying to do, which is feed the hungry during this pandemic.
So did I.
Certainly.
Thank you all very much. We're grateful.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
So next time you go to